Across the campus, several dozen students set up some encampments protesting the pro-Palestine and Israel conflict. Around 11 a.m. this morning is when DPS started to come by and remove some of the encampments and signs and started to push out some of the students in the area. That is when a clash took place between protesters, some students, and DPS officers. DPS officers also, come this way a little bit more, also detained one of the protesters earlier for creating a barrier between the police. Just moments ago, that same protester was just released out of police custody. Come more this way. If you turn the camera down this way, you're starting to see a bit of a barrier being created. Protesters on the opposite side and police officers more so on this side. Tension still very much high on the campus. I'd say a rough estimate of maybe 200, possibly 250 students and protesters at least, with maybe more than 50 officers lined up between the two campuses. Let's cut across this way if we could. Sorry about that. We're leading you now into a current protest that's going on campus. If you look to the right, protesters are shouting to stop the genocide, vying to free Palestine. More and more students have grown within the last few hours. Roughly another 100 or so have joined within the last 30 minutes to an hour. We're expecting the crowd to get a little bit larger as the day goes on. We're still going. Okay. More and more students are coming by. I know a helicopter for one of the news stations around LA has proceeded to keep circling the campus, getting a little bit broader view of what's going on and the situation as it unfolds. Protesters have started to gather right in front of Doheny Library, chanting Free Palestine, a few signs, and a lot more people are coming by as the moments go on. Keep going. Oh, keep going. Okay. Part of this had started because a group of, I know USC. Oh my gosh. Hold on. Just give it some time. USC Divest from Death Coalition is the group that organized the encampment in the morning time. Now it's the group that's also starting to protest around the campus.
Let's go! Let's go! We got one victory already!
We're doing our best to get a live interview with one of the protesters around the area. Excuse me, quick interview about what's happening at the protest here? Okay, sure.
We will honor all our martyrs! We will honor all our martyrs! All the students and the scholars! We will honor! We will honor all our martyrs! We will honor all our martyrs! All the children, sons and daughters! All the children, sons and daughters! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
I'm an international student, but I have few classmates who can answer.
If you could, yes.
From the sea to the river.
Give me another 20 seconds. Quickly, yeah, if possible.
This is one of my students who is in Annenberg and he wants to talk with
Would it be okay to do a quick interview about what's happening here, just your reactions to it and stuff like that?
They have like specific media protocols in place, and I'm not the right person to
sure.
tell you what that
Okay, thank you.
Let's go!
More and more people have joined the protest as the hours have gone on. Will not rest. We will not stop. We will not rest. They're calling for Carol Fault to stop any divestment toward Israel, and that's how the protest has been going so far. We're expecting more people to join as the hours proceed throughout the day.
Not for wars and occupation! Not for wars and occupation! Money for jobs and education! Money for jobs and education! Not for bombs and occupation! Not for bombs and occupation! Money for jobs and education! Money for bombs and education! Not for bombs and occupation! Not for bombs and occupation! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! From the sea to the river! From the sea to the river! Palestine will live forever! Palestine will live forever! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! From the sea to the river! From the sea to the river! Palestine will live forever! Palestine will live forever! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Give me another minute. I'll try and find something.
Free, free, free Palestine! We will not stop! We will not rest! We will not stop, we will not rest. 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 We will not stop, we will not rest.
Excuse me, sir. What does the yellow vest signify? Is there like a specific group that the yellow vest is for?
Not sure.
No? Okay. I'm live with.
Hi, my name is Constantine Anthony. I'm a council member for the city of Burbank, and last year I served as the mayor.
Thank you very much for your time. What can you tell us about the protest that's currently happening right now?
So we're here at Alumni Park at USC. This protest seemed to arise out of a reaction to what's happening at Columbia University right now. If you haven't been paying attention, the university there has cracked down on protests. There's a report that they're even going to full remote Zoom schooling so that there's nothing happening on campus anymore. So this was in a reaction to that. We wanted to get kids out. The folks said we need to show up in solidarity for our brothers and sisters at the other university. In addition to that, we have known for some time that USC, the private university of USC, spends their money, invests their dollars in war profiteering, weapons manufacturing, and the sale of guns and bombs and missiles. So one of the demands here is that USC, as a private institution, remove their funding from that war profiteering. They don't want to see their tuition dollars being used to fund overseas war.
As far as you know, like you had mentioned, this is a reaction to both what's happening at Columbia. I know Harvard also had an encampment that popped out this morning. I'm anticipating that this could happen across other campuses around the around the country in totality. What do you think this could mean for the future of other colleges as well as USC?
Well, big name universities like Harvard, like USC, that gets the headlines. So the more kids around the country at smaller colleges, city colleges, junior colleges, public universities, when they see that these folks are stepping out, it's going to be more likely for them to feel safe enough to do so at their campuses. And the reaction we get from the administration here is going to inform other colleges on what they should do. Now, so far we have seen very little reaction. There was a small detainee event happening earlier. They only took in one person. They ended up letting him go. So we haven't seen the kind of reaction we saw at Columbia, which is a good thing. I think if we move forward and let our folks express themselves, we need to have universities be a bastion, a haven for freedom of assembly and freedom of speech. That is the very crux of what it means to learn at these higher institutions. So we can't have the kind of crackdown we're seeing in Columbia. This is really what we need to be doing.
And USC's been going through a lot of turmoil recently, both with the valedictorian, then canceling commencement speeches. Now this has been going on for months prior, but that culmination of multiple things happening at the same time, do you believe genuinely that the administration will look at this, take it into account, and actually change their ways? It's tough to say. I know it's tough to say.
I'll say this. Administrations can always change, and if they don't, the people in them can. So, for them it's just a job. They can resign. They can be replaced. What we're talking about here is bigger than one person and one tenure. So I'm hoping that as a whole, we as a country learn from this. What we saw happen with the commencement speech, not allowing the valedictorian, for the first time in I think forever, not speak at graduation, was devastating to the entire university, even the kids who didn't agree with her political views. The idea that you, for your very speech, can be taken away and not given to the public, that is a scary thought. That is a scary thought. Now, I'm hoping that doesn't happen and doesn't continue, and we'll see what the administration here at USC does.
Thank you for your time, Anthony. You heard it here. Now the march has moved from in front of Doheny to sort of down the main Trousdale walkway here. If we move over this way, we're anticipating that the march will continue, sort of moving off to the east side of campus, headed back toward Alumni Park where the initial protests and encampments began. They're moving off this way now toward Levy Library, sort of continuing their protests, just trying to get administration to pay a little bit of attention both on what the current situation is happening here on campus and the broader expectations that could happen in the rest of the country on campuses both on the East Coast and the West Coast. Do you have a quick second just to get like a little thing? Okay. The protest is starting to move around campus and stop being stagnant in the middle of it. Disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not rest is the chant that's being pursued by the protesters and some students that are happening around campus.
We will not stop, we will not rest, it's love, divest. We will not stop, we will not rest, it's love, divest.
For those just joining us, earlier this morning, before dawn at around 5 to 6 p.m. on Alumni Park, students began encampments, setting up tents, all for pro-Palestine, protesting the Palestine-Israel conflict. Those continued for a few hours. Around 11 o'clock is when DPS officers showed up to take down the encampments and to take down some of the signs and move some of the protesters out of the area because it violates university rules. Right in those moments is when a clash began to happen between protesters and some students and then DPS officers. That's also when a lot more officers from off the campus came to the campus, just trying to bring a little bit of peace to the situation. Helicopters started circling above and a lot more media presence came to the campus. Around that time is also when one of the protesters was detained by DPS and placed in a car, initially to be taken off campus. Maybe about 20 minutes ago, that protester was released from DPS custody after many students had protested and stopped the car from leaving the campus. The encampments were initially set up by the USC Divest from Death Coalition, hoping that the university stops funding aid in Israel for military weapons and for weapons of destruction that have been harming many people in the area. If somebody's talking, it's not.
Encampment has
Excuse me, miss.
I do.
Okay, perfect. Campbell. Campbell. This way.
Oh, I thought.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Hi, I'm live for Annenberg TV News with.
My name is Hoku. Do you want me to spell it, or
Just first name, last name, spell both.
Okay. First name Hoku, Hoku. Last name Jeffrey, Jeffrey, and I'm a organizer with BAM. It's the Coalition to Defend Affirmative Action, Integration and Immigrant Rights, and Fight for Equality by any means necessary. BAM. For short.
Can you tell us why you and your group joined the protest today on campus?
We're here because Ashna must be the valedictorian of the USC graduating class, must have her right to speak be reinstated for the graduation. President Carol Folt has showed that she is an enemy of free speech on the campus by denying Asna her rightful place as the valedictorian speaker, and she must either resign or be removed. This is to have been willing to destroy the entire USC graduation because she is trying to justify the censorship and repression of Asna is just completely ridiculous, and she has no place, Carol Folt does, as president of this campus.
Now, you brought up Asna's situation. They had canceled out all the other commencement speakers, and we have encampments both on campuses here and across the nation. Do you think that tangible change can be made, and administration on USC's campus will look at these situations and go, you know what, we need to make a change because people are finally noticing, they're being upset, they're having their voices heard. Do you think that a change can be made and will be made?
I think that there can be. The Palestinian people have been able to maintain their struggle, not just in Gaza and the West Bank, but in East Jerusalem also. And they've been able to do that because they know that in the United States and all around the world, particularly here in the U.S., that there's a mass movement, and that movement is growing, continuing to grow at the end of the school year all over the country. And we think that means that, yes, we do think that means that we can succeed in forcing Carol Folt to have to resign, yeah. And for Asna to be reinstated.
Do you think that these protests would also occur at graduation as the semester comes to a close?
I think that they definitely should. The demonstrations have to continue until she's reinstated. That's the mass movement, the international mass movement's the only way to stop the genocide in Gaza, and it's the only way to win Asna's reinstatement. And students here at USC have been doing that, and we just think that we just have to continue to build the power of that movement.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, Oku.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
You heard it here first, and if we turn the camera a little bit here, more students have joined the protests on campus, starting to move and march around. Now the estimate, I'd throw it at maybe 300, possibly 350 students. We still have helicopters, actually 2 of them now, circling around the campus, sort of just getting an aerial view of what's happening now. Again, if you're just joining us, around 5 a.m. this morning, around 6 a.m. possibly, is when encampments on Alumni Park on the east side of campus started to take place. Students set up tents and held signs and started to protest a bit. That went on for a few hours until around 11 a.m. when DPS went near the encampments to remove some of the tents, the signs, and the students. That started a clash between protesters, including some students, and DPS. Around the same time is when one of those protesters was detained by DPS. When they threw him in the car, students surrounded the car and stopped it from leaving, which also helped that protester be released from DPS custody. Now the protest is circling around campus, moving from place to place. The group is starting to move around campus. As far as we can tell, it's staying around Doheny Park area, right in front of Doheny Library, just sort of maintaining the area and having people come by the center part of campus just to focus a little bit more attention on the protests. As far as we know, there is DPS incoming. Where is DPS is where we're still trying to figure out. We'll give you a little bit more updates on that in the coming minutes. More students have begun to join the protest, and a lot more students have at least began looking at the protest from the outside. If we turn the camera this way, we can notice that there's a few more students, at least ones that aren't even marching, just starting to join and look at what's happening more on campus. Excuse me, miss. Do you have a second just to talk about what's going on campus a little bit, maybe your reactions to it, maybe even some of your information out to it? Excuse me, miss, do you have a moment just to talk about the dealing with the schools, just about what's going on campus, some of your feelings around it, maybe some reactions to it?
No, I don't think we can.
Like we mentioned, more students have started to join the protests, a few more people chumming with signs, some showing their support, some just as spectators. We turn the camera toward this way, still more chants going on. DPS is on the way. Where they're coming from and what time they'll be here, we're still unsure. More updates on that in the coming moments. Now, this is not the first encampment that started to take place on campus, nor is it the first protest that's happened on campuses in the States. Columbia University had an encampment that took place this morning, and that was an all-out, completely different situation. Harvard also had an encampment that started to take place this morning. Now USC is starting their encampments in reaction to both of those campuses. Once again, if you're just joining us, at around 5 a.m. this morning, just before dawn, students around campus set up an encampment with tents and signs around Alumni Park on the east side of campus. That took place for a few hours when around 11 o'clock or so, DPS started to take away some of those tents and some of the students that were in the area because it violates university policy. Around that time is also when they arrested one of those protesters and detained them in one of their vehicles. Other protesters surrounded that vehicle, stopped it from leaving the area, which then forced DPS to release that protester. We're just moving through the area where protesters are taking place. Right behind me is where some of the DPS officers and officers were lining up, just creating a barrier between them and the rest of the university. Of which one? Again, I can't hear a single thing as they're trying to ask something. Mention that.
We will not stop! We will not stop! Not that! We will not stop! We will not stop! Hey, hey!
Around 5 in the morning, around 5 in the morning, students and protesters started an encampment at Alumni Park. That proceeded for a few more hours. Around 11 a.m. is when DPS started to take down some of those tents and signs and some of the students because it violated university policy. Around that time is also when a clash between protesters and students and DPS took place. That protest happened for at least 30 minutes, possibly to an hour, and it was a bit more turmoil than I think many of the people on campus were expecting. During that situation, one protester was detained by DPS and placed in a DPS vehicle. Protesters then surrounded the vehicle to stop it from leaving, which forced DPS to release that protester. They still need a segue or which one? Okay. Keep going? Okay. The marches have been a reaction to different situations that have been going on various campuses around the country, both at Columbia and at Harvard. This is not the first protest that we've had on USC's campus. It is, however, so far the first encampment that we have had.
You're supporting
about what's happening here, the situation, some reactions to it. 30 seconds. Say it again? 30 seconds. Okay, 30 seconds. Thank you. Hi, I'm here with...
My name is Ziff, Z-I-F-F, last name S-I-S-T-R-U-N-K. I came from Chicago to observe what these protesters are doing because everybody's going to be coming to Chicago. And it's really a sad day that USC could not conduct himself in a negotiating stage with these. I'm a visitor, but these are students here. So I think the president has to be called down on this, and the police department here. The LAPD, they was very smart not to come into this situation. But the main thing that has to happen is I would like to see the students and USC come together and see if they can negotiate this thing before the commensurate take place.
One real quick question. Now, these have been going on around different campuses across the country. You yourself mentioned that you're a visitor. What do you think it means to the administration here that a change can actually be made, that both students and visitors alike are now paying attention and saying, hey, look, administration, you guys need to get your stuff together because we're paying attention now?
Well, I like to see from this incident, I'm a law enforcement guy. I was really appalled that the policemen had to go through those experiences with students. These are students that know them. These are students that see them every day. And I'm just sad that negotiations between the students and the police department could not come together. I think that is the saddest part. I think we will be able to build from this moment and have a coalition of students, policemen, and the administration.
Were you here when the actual clash itself broke out between some protesters and some of the officers?
And not only was I here, but I saw one policeman and I was able to videotape it. He pushed her down, a young lady who was a student, and that was one of the sad moments of this protest.
Are you able to sort of mention what was going on during that time when protesters?
Well, the thing is when you're in a situation like this, a protest, you can't predict what will happen. And the policemen, they have a job to do, and the students feel as though that this is what they're trying to do to get a point over, even though it's thousands of miles away. But the situation could have been negotiated from the beginning, but it wasn't. Once they locked that one gentleman up, and the students was decided that was enough. And I thought the police weakened their position when they let the gentleman out of the car. Even though I'm with the protesters, I thought that the policemen should have taken a stand, say that we're going to keep law and order here on this campus, and they really weakened their position when they let that gentleman out of the car.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You heard it here first. If you're just joining us, around 5 in the morning, protesters set up an encampment on Alumni Park within the campus. That proceeded for a few more hours until around 11 o'clock when DPS officers showed up and started There's a lot more activity around the campus because of both the protests and some of the officers being here. A lot larger of a crowd has joined. Earlier we had mentioned that it's anywhere from 200, maybe 250 people. Now it's probably closer to about 400, maybe 450 people that have showed up around, whether to join the protest itself in March or some of the people behind me who chose to be bystanders and sort of pay attention to what's going on from afar. We have gotten word that DPS is showing up on campus. Still when and where, we're not exactly sure, but we were told that more sort of law enforcement presence will be coming within the next few moments. We were told through one of the apps through the university that lets us know about different safety measures on campus to try and shy away from the center of campus because of both protester activity and some of officer activity. Like we had mentioned earlier, a lot more people have joined the protests, gaining each by the minute. A lot of people joining, whether it be in marches or by standing in the middle, some holding signs, some covering the event. Other people choose to watch from afar.
Palestine!
The USC Faculty Against Genocide in Palestine also is part of this march. This is not just students. This is including faculty, including other protesters from off the campus. We had spoke to a gentleman later who's a visitor from the Midwest. As we could tell, this campus is not only gaining a lot more media attention, but a lot more crowd from people that are beyond both the campus and the LA area. I'll just hand you your phone back. Eric's going to start sending me the stuff. Okay. DO for which one? Campus officer. Okay. When? Tell me when. Around 11 o'clock is when officers from DPS showed up to Alumni Park to remove some of the encampments and tents, signs, and students that had gathered there. Around that same time is when protesters and students started a clash with the officers that sort of exploded into a bit of a back and forth situation, where one of the protesters was actually detained by DPS and placed in the back of one of the cars. Around that time is also when some students had finally had enough and surrounded the DPS car, stopping it from leaving the campus. DPS then had to release the protester in which they had captured. That is what started to kick off the march that's going on behind me. This has been going on for about an hour. It started with around 200, maybe 250 students and protesters. Now it's ballooned to at least maybe 400 people within the center of campus, some joining the march behind me, holding signs, chanting, other people sort of circling around the campus. Now, these protesters are not just students. As you can tell, it includes the Faculty Against Genocide in Palestine. It also includes visitors from outside of LA. Earlier, we spoke to a gentleman from Chicago, and we had also met other protesters who weren't even from the USC campus or from the LA area. This just goes to show how both encampments on USC's campus, encampments that also took place at Columbia and at Harvard University, this is a trend not only nationwide, but also showing administrations at these prestigious universities that students are paying attention to what's happening, and they're aware of where the funding in these schools go, and they're doing their best to use their voices and use their signs and use these peaceful protests to make a change for what they want their schools to fund. He is not texting. Okay. Go towards Boulevard. Yeah. Line of DPS, go toward the line of DPS. Okay. I got you. We're currently headed toward Boulevard Auditorium, where a line of DPS officers is said to have been sort of building over the last few minutes. Why they're there, we have implications as to why they could be showing up, both maybe to try and keep the protests a little bit more peaceful and try and maintain a little bit of decency within the area. So we're just sort of headed over to Boulevard right now, just making sure that things will be okay. Coming through this way, thank you. Oh walk. Okay. Eric, I cannot hear you. Everything is up, but I cannot hear you. If you can hear me in the control room, I cannot hear you, not very clearly at least. Would you like us to do our best and talk with one of the officers, I guess? Okay, someone said talk to a yes. Okay. Excuse me, sir. Do you have no? Do you have any of your other comrades that might want to talk? Where can I find Chief Carla?
667 South McClintock, GPS main station.
Okay, thank you. The only officer that said they had talked is by the DPS station near McClintock. Would you like us to head there? Because we'd have to leave the post here. I guess he said just film the officer. Okay, rehash. Yeah. For those just joining us, around 5 a.m. near the dawn time, students on the alumni park area of campus created an encampment with tents and signs, and students just sort of occupying the area. Now around 11 a.m. is when DPS officers came to the area and started to move students out of the area, move their tents, move their signs, and sort of push students out of the area because they violated university rules. Around that time is also when protesters and other students started clashing a bit with DPS officers. During that clash, one of the protesters was detained and put in the back of a DPS vehicle. That's when students had sort of had enough. They surrounded the vehicle, calling for that protester to be released. Eventually, that protester was released, which sort of kicked off the marches that you see going on in front of us in the center of campus, in front of Doheny Library. This march started with maybe 200 people or so. That was around an hour and a half ago. Now it's ballooned to nearly 400 people. Whether those are people joining the protest, some people watching from afar, some standing by and just wanting to check out what's going on behind campus. Now, moments ago, a line of officers started to be created behind me right here in between Boulevard Auditorium and the center area of campus. This is just in reaction to the current clash that happened earlier. The protesters have been circling around the center part of campus for nearly the last half hour. In between that time, a line of officers was created between Boulevard Auditorium and the protesters behind me. Just in an attempt to keep a little bit of peace and hopefully to create no insane event from happening between the two groups. Earlier, there was a clash between DPS officers and students in which one of the protesters was arrested. That protester, after student pushback, was also later released, which kicked off the march and circling that you see in the center of campus here. Yeah, just don't hang up. That actually makes it easier. Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. I got you. Okay. Okay. Stay tuned for more coverage when we go live at 5:30. For Annenberg Media, I'm Malcolm Caminero.